Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning back into the 3P Champions. I'm Rob Stoller in Philadelphia.
And I'm Greg Stern in Seattle.
Today's 3P guest is kind of an exemplary guy. He's had a career of excellence in everything he's done, from training elite athletes to really having become a sought-after speaker. He's very bright, speaks incredibly well, and has a lot of wisdom. Greg?
Yeah, I'm excited to hear from Alan today. I was introduced to him because of my love of basketball, and our acquaintance knew that we both loved basketball and were passionate, so he introduced us. I had no idea he's the guy he is, but found him very interesting. He's got a great basketball background and training, and he's a great keynote speaker. I would love to hear him talk, but no, I'm fascinated with the guy. He's so precise, so prepared in everything he does. So I think everybody's going to find him pretty interesting.
I don't think there's any question. So let's go to our conversation with Alan Stein. Thanks a lot.
Hey, welcome to the show, Alan Stein Jr. It's great to have you on the 3P Champions podcast with Rob and I. We know you definitely represent and exemplify passion, purpose, and principle. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. It's great to be with you both, and I look forward to a fun conversation about the 3Ps.
No question.
All right, Robo, you take it away.
Yeah, I mean, in looking at your young but accomplished life, it seems to me, my thinking is your principles have never changed, because those are things we live by. Your passion, I'll have you tell me about what your passions are these days, as well as your purpose, because, you've gone through a number of different phases, excelling at all of them. So I want to hear kind of what your passions and purpose are, and how all the different areas of your life have impacted what you're doing now.
Well, I appreciate you setting the table so cleanly. What I'll say is, as we look at each of the 3Ps, my principles haven't necessarily changed, but they've definitely matured and evolved over time. That the principles that I live by today at 50 years old, as the father of 3 children, have definitely evolved over my principles, when I was a teenager. But the foundation of being a high character person, of being kind, like those types of principles definitely haven't wavered.
Yeah.
From a purpose standpoint, my purpose hasn't really changed a lot, although my vocation and my target has changed a lot. I've always lived by the mantra of a candle loses nothing by lighting another candle. And I spent a good portion of my professional career in the basketball training space trying to light the candles of basketball players who wanted to run faster and jump higher. And I've since pivoted that to being able to light candles of folks in the corporate space who want to excel in their different domains. But the one red thread that has tied all of this together my entire life has been my passion for the game of basketball. Basketball was my first identifiable passion, and I fell in love with the game at 5 years old. And here, 45 years later, basketball is still a massive passion of my life, and it has kind of connected each of the different areas of my life. So I still very much live out the 3Ps on a daily basis.
So just as an aside, and I was talking to Greg, and I don't want to take too much time, but my Sixers now have Jaylen Brown on their roster.
I saw
Jaylen Brown.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think that makes them immediate contenders. If you can keep Joel Embiid healthy and Maxey continues to play at the level he's capable of, Jaylen could be a nice addition to that. And one thing that I've really noticed as an avid fan, and even with my insights into the NBA, is lots of times players and coaches just need an environment change. They need a fresh start. They just need to shake things up a little bit. And, Jaylen Brown is arguably a top 10 player in the NBA.
Absolutely.
But was kind of hitting a few roadblocks his last couple of years with the Celtics. And, I'm hoping that his fresh start with the Sixers is a great one. And at the same time, I'm a huge Brad Stevens fan, so therefore I always believe that the Celtics have a fighting chance, and I'm an equal Jason Tatum fan. So I'm hoping that the shift that they're making on their end allows them to also be competitive. And I think there's a good chance that we see the Sixers and the Celtics fighting it out in the Eastern Conference Finals for years to come.
I agree with all of that. Well, in your first point, it's also important, even for these guys who are getting paid a boatload of money, to be loved.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure Jalen was feeling loved anymore. They've been trying to deal him, for the past few months. So a new environment and a new fan base and people that are obviously going out of their minds that he's now on their team.
Yeah.
As well as maybe a little chip on his shoulder for the Celtics letting him go, which, I think the whole situation, I don't know about it. We don't. I also give Brad Stevens the benefit of the doubt. It looks like an absolutely crazy move to trade Jaylen Brown for Paul George, even though he finished the season very well. But Brad Stevens doesn't have to prove anything to me. So I'm just glad it went down that way. And, I think the addition of Brown will help keep Embiid healthy. I don't think he's going to have to feel like the go-to guy.
Yeah, no, I think so. And one of the things I find so interesting, and having been a longtime Brad Stevens fan, he plays both the short game and the long game. Because I noticed that it wasn't just a one-for-one swap.
Oh, sure.
They also got, I think, 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks for years to come.
Yeah.
And I would imagine they also cleared up a little cap space, because I know Jaylen Brown was getting paid, obviously deserved to be paid. So it's always interesting to see some of the intricacies that go on behind the scenes. And, guys in Brad Stevens' position are always tasked with winning now, because sports fans are very impatient, but also laying the foundation to allow yourself to win in the future as well. And they're always trying to jockey between those two things. And I find that interesting, because on some level, I feel like that's what all of us are trying to do in our lives. We're trying to be fulfilled and high performing and successful now, but we're also trying to lay the foundation that will allow us to do that for years to come. So, it will be a fun experiment to watch. And as we've seen proven several times, sometimes these blockbuster trades go really, really well, and sometimes they don't. You just don't know.
Yeah.
I know the fan base in Philly is excited about it.
Very.
But let's go back to your training days there, Alan. Obviously, I'm a very passionate basketball player like you, basketball person, and I've learned a lot of lessons in my life through basketball, a lot of mentors and coaches. Tell us how you got started in training and working with these athletes, and what you learned from that process and teaching these incredible athletes.
So I was a very dedicated basketball player from age 5 all the way up to my early 20s. I was able to play at Elon University, a small school in North Carolina. And while I was at Elon, I started to develop an equal love for what we now call the performance side of the game. Back then, we just called it strength and conditioning. It was lifting weights and agility drills and plyometrics and how could you run faster and jump higher and improve your on-court athleticism. And I started to really devour all sorts of different training regimens and programs, at first just on myself so that I could be the best athlete I was capable of. But then when I realized that I didn't have the requisite talent or skills to play the game professionally, and I knew that when my career at Elon was over, my formal playing days were going to be over as well. I figured what could be better than combining this first love of basketball with this new love of performance training, and I just decided that my first job post-college would be to be a basketball performance coach. And I moved from North Carolina back to the DC area, which is where I currently reside and where I'm from, and started working mostly with middle school and high school age players to take them through the same types of workouts and programs that I had taken myself through, and really studied the game and studied performance training, and really was able to build a really nice career and vocation doing something I loved. And the DC area is one of the hotbeds for youth and high school basketball in the country. And there was a few different really prominent high schools here in the DC area that I was able to work with. The first was Montrose Christian, which is where Kevin Durant graduated from. And then the second was DeMatha Catholic High School, which sent several players to the NBA over the years. And working at both of those different schools earned me opportunities to work with Nike and Jordan Brand and USA Basketball. And then that put me in rooms and put me in gyms with guys like LeBron James and Kobe Bryant and Stephen Curry and just an amazing list of really accomplished players. And I was very observant during those times and just tried to pick up as many things as I could. I would study those guys relentlessly and try and figure out their behaviors and their routines and their approaches and their perspectives, and would apply that to my own training, apply that to the players I was working with. And now, a couple decades removed, I now apply that to everyone that I preach and teach to and show them how to apply those same types of principles and approaches to their work. Because as you guys both know, there's such high utility in these general principles. The characteristics that it takes to be elite in basketball are very similar to the characteristics it takes to be elite in any area of your life. If you want to be an elite podcast host, you want to be an elite father, you want to be an elite sales professional, you want to be an elite lawyer, it's really the same principles that we use. So I try to apply those in every facet of my life.
So, the guys you just mentioned of having worked with, interacted with, and trained, in KD's case and some others, it's like the Mount Rushmore of basketball. So I know it's going back some, but I'm sure it's still fresh in your mind because you use it in your own work. What are some of those founding principles that they share?
Well, I could probably give you guys a list of about a dozen things that those guys do consistently that allow them to perform at a high level. But for the sake of brevity, I'll give you three that jump out immediately. And these three are probably the foundation. The first is a lesson that I learned directly from Kobe Bryant back in 2007. I had a chance to watch one of his really early morning workouts. And at the time, it was my opinion, he was the best player on the planet. And I remember as a young coach watching his workout and being very surprised that he kept drilling down on very basic drills, very fundamental drills, stuff I had done with middle school players. Mm-hmm. And I remember being very surprised at that. And when I had a conversation with him later that day and I asked him about that, he said something that really changed my perspective forever. He said, "Why do you think I'm the best player in the world? It's because I never get bored with the basics." And his commitment to working on the mastery of the fundamentals during the unseen hours is a trait that I've noticed with all high performers in every area of life. High performers have a respect for the basics, a respect for the fundamentals, and they work relentlessly towards mastery of them. So that would be number one. Number two is high performers in every area of life learn to blend confidence with humility. They earn the right to be confident because they put in work during the unseen hours and they put in so many repetitions that they believe in themselves and they have the confidence that they'll perform, but they always remain humble. And in this context, when I say remain humble, humble means you stay open to feedback. Humble means you stay open to being coached. Humble means that no matter how good you are, you know that you can still get better. That you don't look through the lens of, hey, I'm the best guy on our team, so that's good enough. Instead, you say, I know I can still get better, so I'm gonna get back to work. And I believe that those in any area of life that can combine confidence with humility, it's one of the most attractive and powerful elixirs that we have. And then the third trait that I've noticed from these elite level basketball players, but I've noticed in every other domain, is they're very clear on their goals. They're very intentional about the direction they're going. But instead of focusing on their goals, they always focus on the process. They focus on the next actionable step that they can take to inch themselves closer to the goal. Or in the case of basketball, inch their team closer to winning a championship. So they understand the importance of results and outcomes, but they focus on the process. And to me, it doesn't matter if we're talking about someone in the corporate world, or we're talking about someone in the sports world. If you can respect and work on the fundamentals, you can earn your confidence but still remain humble, and you can be crystal clear on what you're trying to achieve but focus daily on the process. You do those three things and you'll be unstoppable.
I think that's a perfect sort of pocket guide for living, for achieving, for becoming great. So again, as kind of a diversion, but it's relevant today, what do you think about the LeBron situation? Having gotten some insight into him, and talk about that last principle you raised about, goals and where you're going, and make a team. What does your instinct tell you he's going to do?
Well, I'm so far removed from any personal interaction with him that I just sit back and watch as a fan right now. And here's what I believe. I mean, I know that the talking heads on ESPN get paid to speculate and to judge other people's decisions. But I really believe that, LeBron is a once in a generation type talent. His longevity is something that we should all stand in awe of. And he has got a pretty crystal clean record as far as being a great ambassador for the game. And some of the records that he set may never be broken. So I believe that he has earned the right to make whatever decision he thinks is best for himself, for his family, for his career, and for his legacy. And I'll root for him, whatever that may be. I've seen a few different scenarios. Maybe he could team up with Steph Curry and Draymond in Golden State. He could team up with LaMelo and Ant in Minnesota. I have no idea where he's going to end up, but every morning when I wake up, I click on the ESPN app to see if there's some answer to it. But wherever he goes, I'll root for him because I believe he has earned the right to make this decision. And I'd like to see him go out on a high note because his career has been remarkable.
I couldn't agree more with every single word you just said. So how do you make those principles when you're talking to a group of people you've never met before, whether it's a corporate meeting or whatever? How do you make those principles your own? What do you tell people? What's your first 5 minutes to steal the other thunder?
Well, it's really what I try and do is I try to model the behavior that certainly I would like to see my own children emulate, but I try to model the behavior and the discipline and the approaches and the principles that I believe would be in other people's good interest, best interest to at least consider. I'm certainly not here to claim that I have the answers or that the way that I do things is the best way or the right way, but I simply share from my experience firsthand, as well as my experience of working with elite level athletes and elite level folks in the business world, and say, hey, everyone that I've had a chance to work with that works on the fundamentals, that earns confidence but stays humble, that focuses on the process, they're able to achieve unbelievable results and have very high productivity and live very fulfilling lives. So it's just my job to share that as an option. And whether folks choose to embrace that and adopt that and live their lives accordingly is always completely up to them. But I believe, that a candle loses nothing by lighting another candle. And any time that I learn something or have something that I believe would add value to other people, I believe it's my job to share it, and that I need to be a steward to pay that stuff forward. So these things have been life-changing principles for me as a father, as a speaker, as a business owner, as a coach. So I feel it's my duty to share them with others.
Alan, I love your philosophy about everything you've said, but I want to go back a little bit and touch some things that you talked about, the process, fundamentals, and outcomes. And I know you've been at the elite level, but I want to go back to youth sports a little bit because I'm in that a little bit. Yep. And it's a prevailing conversation now about how the process or the system is broken. And
I'm going to just hit a light.
In terms of fundamentals in the youth space, it seems like we're moving through that process so fast that we skip a lot of the fundamentals. And we're focused on an outcome that's so far ahead that a lot of these kids are getting passed on just from the experience. They're not learning, not growing, and they're not getting the skills to develop. How do you think that's impacting the game of basketball?
Well, ultimately, I think the epicenter of the problem at the youth sports level is what you just said, is that most of the adults involved are putting way too much emphasis on outcomes and not enough emphasis on the process. I mean, if I had to boil it down to a singular problem, that would be it. That youth, let's just say youth sport parents and sometimes youth sport coaches, but people that are putting on these events, they're just focused on outcomes. They're just focused on winning games and scoring points and college scholarships and making money. They're actually undermining the development of the actual players. They've got everything backwards. You know, it's of my belief, if you take a young person and you help them naturally improve their athleticism and you teach them the fundamentals of the game and you teach them how to play the game and you teach them how to be good teammates and work cohesively with other, their other teammates, if they can do all of those things at a high level, then all of those outcomes will just be a natural byproduct of that. If you get a group of kids that can do those things consistently, they'll win more games than not. They'll earn college scholarships. They'll make, those are just the byproducts. But instead, everyone has that backwards, and we just try to find shortcuts or hacks to get the outcomes that we want. So yeah, at the youth level, I'm a big believer in teaching the game the right way, making it fun, and really doubling down on the intangibles that the game teaches. You know, use basketball and use sports as a way to teach young people things like accountability and respect and work ethic and being a part of a team and being selfless. You know, there's hardly any other ground as fertile as that to teach those types of lessons. So as someone who played youth sports my entire life, as the father of 3 children who all played youth sports, and as someone who worked in youth sports for almost 2 decades, I certainly hate to see its denigration and would love to see it continue to improve.
Well, we know that a big piece of it when you're really young, it's got to be fun. It seems like that's kind of evaporated from the process, but I got 2 other things for you. Sure. I think of you and what I've seen so much and read about you, you're just really focused with intention, but I want to know more about how you prepare, your preparation for not only training, but for your keynote speaking. What is your situation like? How do you prepare for speaking, almost anything you do? Because you seem to be a really disciplined and prepared guy.
Well, a former mentor of mine, I guess not former, he's still a current mentor, a gentleman named Kevin Eastman, who you probably know, Greg,
Kevin, yeah.
Said something to me, almost 2 decades ago that really stuck with me. He said, the best of the best make their preparation their separation. And I don't know if he was the original person that coined that term, but that's who I give credit to, and it really stuck with me. So in every area of my life, I aim to be fully prepared. You know, there's a lot of things that are uncontrollable. When I walk into a room, I don't control whether or not I'm the smartest person in the room. I don't control if I'm the most talented person. I don't even control if I'm the most handsome person in the room. But I have somewhat control over whether or not I'm the most prepared person, because that's a controllable factor. And I've always believed in controlling the controllables. So for me, I do everything in my power to be as prepared as possible for every situation, and especially when it comes to my keynote speaking. I take my craft very seriously. I take my business very seriously, and I really want to over-deliver for every audience that I have the opportunity to be in front of. So I make sure that I'm relentlessly prepared, and I'm also a systems and a processes guy, and I view every area of my life as if I'm still a competitive athlete. So I look at a keynote no different than I used to look at a basketball game when I was a kid and say, all right, I've got a game on Thursday morning. What do I need to do to prepare my mind, body, and skills to be the best basketball player I can be on Thursday morning? And now I just do the same thing as a keynote speaker and go, okay, I've got a keynote Thursday morning. What steps do I need to take a couple of months before, a couple of weeks before, a couple of days before, and a couple of hours before to allow myself to show up on stage prepared to be as valuable and as helpful and as useful as possible? And that's how I approach it. So that's my preparedness, is to make sure that I've done everything I can to show up on that stage so where I can be fully present, where I can have some fun, and I can make sure, most importantly, I'm adding value and I'm being helpful to the audience.
You know, to roll it back a little bit, I had a question earlier when you talked about working at KD's high school and the other school you invoked. How did you end up getting in there? Did you go see them? Did they contact you? And this is just, I think I'm curious for people in general. who are looking to do something may not have the self-confidence to walk into a cold call or whatever and say, I think I can help you, or I think you need me, or I think we can help each other. How did that process go? You know, because you were, I guess, near the beginning of your career, and that was obviously a big step for you. How'd that come about?
It was a huge step. So having grown up in this area, I had always heard the legend of Stu Vetter, who was the head coach at Montrose Christian. And at that time, that was one of the preeminent high school programs in the DC area. I mean, they were churning out Division I and NBA level players pretty regularly. And I knew that if I could work with the team and be associated with the team, that it would do a few things. Number one, I would learn a lot, because I knew that if I could spend time around a Hall of Fame caliber coach and these elite level players, that I would learn a lot to help me with my craft. But I also had the foresight to know it would raise my stock and my perceived value in the world, because folks would say, hey, if he's the strength and conditioning coach for Montrose Christian, then he must be pretty good. So there was some self-serving nature behind it, but it actually took me a couple of years to finally crack that nut and to get in with Montrose. I mean, this is the very early 2000s. So this was even before email was as prevalent as it is today. I mean, I was handwriting letters, I was sending faxes, and I was leaving messages on an old school voicemail machine about trying to get an opportunity to come in and share some ideas and some thoughts, and all of which were unreturned for literally 2 years. And then one time, because I'm a persistent son of a gun, one time I made my monthly call to their office, and one of their assistants picked up, a gentleman named David Adkins, who still to this day is a good friend and a mentor. And Coach Atkins picked up, and we just started talking, and I shared a little bit about what I did and how I thought I could add value to their program. That's one of the most important parts. Even though getting this job was going to be really good for me, in order to get the job, I had to prove that it was going to be very beneficial for them. And basically, I let him know, you will be getting professional level strength and conditioning services for your high school athletes if you allow me an opportunity to come in. And he allowed me to come in. I worked out one of their players at the time, a kid named Linus Kleza, who went on to play at Missouri for 2 years, then played for the Denver Nuggets for a while, and he's one of the best players to ever come out of the country of Lithuania. But Coach Atkins basically brought me Linus and said, hey, I'll let you work him out for an hour. If he likes the workout, then you're in. You can work with us. If he doesn't, don't ever call me again and pretend we never met. And thankfully, the workout with Linus went really great. He was a workhorse and he loved being in the weight room. So that certainly was a very lucky advantage that I had. But he loved the workout. As soon as he got in the car with Coach Atkins, he said, that was awesome. When can I do it again? And the rest, they say, is history. Then Coach Atkins let me come in and work with the players that summer. And then at the end of summer, he walked me into Coach Vetter's office and introduced me and said, this is the young man that's been working with our players this summer. I think it'd be very beneficial for him to work with us this upcoming season. And Coach Vetter agreed. And I was at Montrose for the next 7 years and got to work with a lot of really great players, learned a lot. And that's where Coach Vetter made personal introductions to Nike and to Jordan Brand and to some of the other groups I later worked with. At the end of 7 years, I felt it was time for a change. I felt that I had left my thumbprint on Montrose and that they had taught me everything that they were capable of teaching me, and I was ready to make a change. And that's when I left and decided to go to DeMatha Catholic High School. And at that point, I had 7 years of a credible resume. So it was a much easier phone call to head coach Mike Jones at that time. And he and I had worked together at some of the Nike Skills Academies, so we already had a rapport. But that was a much easier phone call. He said, absolutely, if you'd like to come join us at DeMatha, we'd love to have you. And then I spent 6 years working with DeMatha. So those 13 years were just an unbelievable time in my life where I got to learn a lot, experience a lot, and certainly work with some phenomenal players.
So that little summation of sort of the germination of your career is kind of a TED talk on principles of career advancement and management. And I think it was sort of just fantastic how you stated all of it. And principles abound in what you just said, from you know, from making your priority helping the people you're appealing to. Even though, you know, you don't have to say, I'm really good at what I do. You say, I'd really like to help you. I mean, I think that's a huge principle that people have to just understand. It's a simple thing. So that was a great little masterclass in how to approach advancing yourself. Even knowing in your own mind that if I do get there, I'm going to learn. I'm going to benefit. They will too, but I will too. And that's kind of the win-win you're looking for in any relationship.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many lessons that can be pulled from that story. I mean, one is just having a relentless obsession with being persistent. You know, at that age, I was pretty stubborn and pretty hard-headed. I was like, there's no way that you're going to ignore me for years on end. So I will call, fax, and handwrite you a letter once a month for years until you give me the respect to return it. And it just so happens, thankfully, Coach Atkins picked up the phone that day. And, he and I can still laugh about it to this day. You know, he had a really interesting journey too. Coach Atkins, he ended up going from Montrose to DeMatha before I did. And then he went and worked for Brenda Freese with the women's basketball program at University of Maryland. And then he went and worked for the Washington Wizards in the NBA. And then he went to the Portland Trail Blazers in the NBA. And now he's currently on the women's staff at University of Washington. So he's much closer to you guys, or at least to you, Greg.
Wow. Didn't even know that.
Yeah, Dave Atkins is one of the best folks I've ever met in my life, on and off the court. But I also had the humility to realize, you know, I'd like to believe that I would have stayed the path and I would have found a way had he never picked up that phone. But at the exact same time, I can say with a huge smile that had he not picked up the phone or not been as open-minded or not given me that chance, I don't know that I'd be sitting here with you guys right now. My life could have taken a much different turn. So I also believe it's a lesson in gratitude. And anytime I talk to Coach Atkins, I make sure to remind him how grateful I am that he gave, you know, at the time, a complete nobody a chance. And then I was able to use that to build into a career that I'm so grateful for. And because of that, now in my current position in life, anytime I can extend an olive branch and give a younger person a chance or an opportunity or do something to help them, I do my very best to do that, because there have been countless people like Coach Atkins who have helped me and who have sent the elevator back down to help someone like myself. And I just want to make sure that I'm constantly doing that for the people that are coming up behind me and that are younger than me.
Alan, I love everything you say, man. You're an incredible guy.
Same.
My first corporate job was in sales too.
Oh.
And, you know, it takes, I took my basketball skills just like you and took them to sales. And it was hard because you're getting no a lot. But there's a lot of these quotes and things people have said. Danny Beard is a guy that ran NBC camps for 30 years, played at Kansas State way back in the day, as a board member at Hoop Fest. His big mantra was hard work pays off. And it seems to me you're an extremely hard worker. But the other part of that is you also have an extremely positive attitude and extreme confidence, or you just don't, and nothing phases you negatively. You just like bounces off because you know you're going to make it happen. But tell us more about how attitude and just hard work pays off for you.
So I'm a big believer in controlling the controllables. And if we really whittle down my philosophy, I actually believe there's only two things in this world that each of us has 100% control over 100% of the time. And that's our own effort and our own attitude. So I do my best to make sure that those are two separators for me. Now, I don't want this to be a game of verbal semantics. You know, you can take effort and attitude and mix them together and get enthusiasm. Of course, we're in control of how enthusiastic we choose to be. We're in control of how prepared we choose to be. We're in control of the decisions we make. But ultimately, we're still just talking about effort and attitude. And I never want the reason that I fall short of a goal, or the reason that I fail, or the reason that something doesn't work out. I don't want the answer to that to be because of my lack of effort or my poor attitude. Let that be for some other reason. Let it be for a reason that is outside of my control. And if that's the case, I can learn to live with that. But when I fall short of something because I didn't give enough effort or I didn't have a good enough attitude, to me, that's where regret's really born. So I do the best I can to work really hard. And some of that, you have to condition yourself and learn how to work. And I've found an experience with myself and with the athletes and corporate folks I've worked with is you have to learn how to work hard. And your standard of working hard often changes with your environment. I mean, I remember thinking that I worked hard as a high school basketball player until I got to college and saw what really working hard meant. And I thought I was working hard in college until I'm in a gym watching Kobe Bryant work. And then I was like, okay, this is what working hard is. And so the definition of working hard can certainly evolve and mature as we get more life experience, as it should. I mean, what I consider working hard today at 50 is a lot different than I thought working hard was when I was 15. And same thing with attitude. Now, I am human, and I have the full gamut of emotions. While I choose to have a positive outlook and I choose to approach life with that type of vitality, I still feel the wide range of emotions. So I want to make sure I go on record and let you both know there are plenty of times where I'm in a low mood, where I'm disappointed, where I'm feeling dejected. You know, I feel those things, but what I've learned to do is accept those feelings as part of the human condition, and I don't try to resist them or ignore them or suppress them. I just allow myself to feel how I'm going to feel. But what's most important is I always get to choose my response to how I'm feeling. And I make sure that the response that I put out in the world is one that is positive, is one that is going to add value to others, is one that's going to lift people up and not tear people down. But that's a decision that I have the power to make, is how I choose to respond. But I don't always feel positive, and I certainly don't always think positive thoughts, but I do the best I can to always have positive responses that move me and those around me in that direction.
Well, I can definitely see that you have passion, probably a lot of fire. Hey, we had John Stockton on here last week, and one of the things he talks about, and obviously we know he's a high IQ fundamental guy, and Mike Nielsen, you may know Mike as a strength coach, right?
Oh,
they both talked about this other word called habits, and John was really serious about how important his habits were to the success in his career. You obviously have incredible habits. Are you a guy that is always structured and has habits that you follow in every aspect of your life? What are some of those habits?
I've always believed in the power of habits, and but the habits are the things we do unconsciously and the things we do consistently. And if we intentionally make them binary, we can say that good habits, and for those that are watching, you saw me do that in air quotes, and we can have bad habits. And the reason I say that is I don't believe that habits are necessarily good or bad, right or wrong. They inherently serve a purpose, but ultimately, I try to align my life with as many habits that are moving me in the direction that I'm trying to go, as opposed to those that undermine my ability to do that. Now, with that said, as someone that is very conscious of his habits, someone who considers himself and identifies as being very disciplined, and someone who literally speaks and writes about habits, I can look right in this camera and tell you both, I don't have all perfect habits, but perfect has never been that's not my measuring stick. For me, what's way more important than perfection is progress. And I can say with a huge smile that I have better habits today in most areas of my life than I have at any other previous time. So I'm moving in the right direction. But yeah, I'm a big believer that what we do consistently shapes our lives and shapes who we are. So I want to, stack my day with as many habits that serve me and move me in that direction as possible. And I also believe that everything matters. That I want to have good habits in each of the areas of my life. I want to have good nutrition habits and good sleep habits. I want to have good parenting habits when it comes to connecting with my children, good habits for preparing for keynote speeches. Like, I want to have good habits in every area of my life. So I'm constantly working to refine and level up those habits and what I do on a daily basis.
A couple of observations. One thing you talked about, but I want to emphasize, is relationships. That the people you've met along the way, you're still in touch with people, and they helped you and you're helping them. And I think people need to really, and young people in particular, need to understand that relationships are to be cherished and cultivated and appreciated and perpetuated. You know, not everybody you meet today is going to be in your life forever, but I got off on a life tangent recently that Greg knows about, and it's a phrase that I'd had in my head for 40 years before I trademarked it, and it's nowhere is now here. And I like the word play, but basically it kind of addresses the phenomenon that every single stop along this journey has brought us to where we are today. Every relationship may have introduced us to somebody else. Every stop we've made, maybe we met someone else. And it's just that feature of life that if you're not really paying attention, you may not notice it while it's happening. But it seems that you do appreciate not only where you are now, but how you got here. And I think that's really important. And in my life, I don't necessarily have fantastic habits. I think I do have a good attitude, but I think the best thing that ever happened to me, like professionally, was that I've done so much work with people living with disabilities. As a producer, that just became a focus of mine unconsciously. I didn't mean to do it, but I realized at some point I had this body of work with people in very, very difficult life situations. And by and large, at some point in our discussion, almost to a person, they told me life is good. And I mean quadriplegics, quadra-amputees, you can't even imagine, telling me life is good. So I haven't spent that much time feeling sorry for myself or feeling down about life. And it's been a blessing to me. But there's a way to approach life, and I think you have it. I think Greg has it. And I'm trying to embody that kind of passion and purpose and principle, every day if I can. And I can see why you're a sought after speaker and motivator, because I agree with every word you've said. It would just take me, 2 days to say it to a group of people. And you have your presentation and philosophy pretty well formed, and it's by practice, I'm sure. So I really appreciate the information you share and the way you share it. It's easy to understand, it's impossible to argue with, and it's very, very helpful, I'm sure, to everybody who has an opportunity, including us, to hear it from you.
Well, that's so kind of you to say. I appreciate that very much, and really appreciate you sharing that and for the work you're doing. And, a couple of things there. I mean, one, yes, when you have an opportunity to spend time with folks that on paper shouldn't think life is good, and yet that's the attitude that they have, I mean, that is an absolute game changer. And I really applaud your gratefulness and having been in those rooms and have been with those people. The other thing you said, you acknowledged in a moment of vulnerability that maybe you don't have the best habits, and a couple of things about that. One is make sure that you practice kindness and compassion and self-forgiveness to yourself. Don't worry about whether or not you have great habits, but if you feel compelled or motivated to make them slightly better, that's all you have to focus on is kind of very marginal, small, systematic, incremental improvements. Can you decide to have just slightly better habits for the rest of 2026 than maybe you had at the beginning of 2026, or maybe slightly better habits in August than maybe you've had in July. So give yourself the space and grace to just make just minor improvements. Don't feel like you've got to change everything and so forth. And the last thing I'll say, and really appreciate all the things that you just shared. As you can see from this sign above my head, I believe in embracing simplification. I think complexity undermines execution, and the name of the game is execution in every area of our life. So I try to break things down to their simplest components. And for me, there's really only 4 areas of life that I have any interest in or any concern with. And these are in no particular order. The first is what you just mentioned, relationships. Relationships are one of my primary 4 pillars. Relationships with my children, relationships with my family and friends, with my clients, with new friends like you two gentlemen. But relationships are something that I pay a close attention to, I'm very grateful for, and I put a lot of time and attention in. Another one of my main pillars is my well-being. My physical, my mental, and my emotional health and well-being. I spend a lot of time, money, and resources on doing everything I can to be physically, mentally, and emotionally fit. So that's a second pillar that's important. At this stage in my life, a third pillar is my craft, is getting really good at the craft of communication, of speaking, and being able to really be captivating on stage. So I put a lot of time and effort into getting really good at my craft. And my fourth, you could call them experiences or you could call them memories, but I'm not really into a lot of tangible things, but I'm really into cool experiences and making memories. You know, a recent experience, which I know Greg will appreciate, a month ago, I participated in the Coach K fantasy camp down at Duke, and I went down and played basketball for 5 days under the watchful eye of Coach K at Cameron Indoor Stadium, and it was just an unbelievable experience. Fast forward 6 months from now, I'm going with a cohort of friends to climb Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania in Africa, which is something I've never done before, and excited for that opportunity. So for me, making memories and living cool experiences are my fourth pillar. And I share that because if it doesn't fall into one of those 4 pillars, then there's a good chance that I'm not really devoting much time, attention, or financial resources to it. I choose to devote all of my time and resources to those 4 pillars. And I will say as well that I'm not saying that my 4 pillars need to be your 4 pillars, but what I would highly recommend everyone does is to get crystal clear on what your pillars are or what you find most meaningful in life, and then make sure that the overwhelming majority of decisions you make and habits you have are in alignment with those pillars. And to me, living in alignment is how we not only produce at a higher level and perform at a higher level, but it makes life so much more fulfilling. And, so that's really how I try and live my life now, is in alignment with what I believe is most valuable and most important to me.
Wow. It sounds to me as sort of an offshoot of your experience, the importance of experiences is probably, I don't know if it's challenging yourself. Certainly climbing Kilimanjaro is not a day at the beach. It's a challenging physical, I'm sure it's going to be as challenging as anything you've ever done physically, and you're embracing the challenge, as you did when you persisted to get into the high schools, as you've done when you decided, I'm sure the first time you stepped on a stage, it was a new experience. I've had that as a teacher, as an actor, as a lot of things. And I always felt that it's important for people to stretch at some point, to get out of your comfort zone, feel what it's like maybe to be a little nervous before you walk onto stage or head up the mountain or whatever it is. What do you think about that concept of challenging yourself?
Well, it's one that it's always run parallel to being an athlete. I mean, as Greg can probably confirm, when you're a basketball player, if you want to be a good player, you push outside of your comfort zone. You run sprints until you're really winded. You do shooting drills until your shooting arm hurts. I mean, you intentionally have to leave your comfort zone. And I've just kind of applied that to every area of my life. There's this concept that's propagated on social media about do hard things, and that there's a lot of satisfaction that comes from intentionally doing hard things. So yeah, I try to do hard things. And, at 50 years old and in relatively decent fitness shape, I can still do some decent, hard physical things. But I also recognize that, when I'm in my 80s or 90s, maybe I won't be doing as many hard physical things, but I'll still want to challenge myself mentally or emotionally. And, the funny thing about Kilimanjaro, which I've joked with the group that I'm going with, the climbing the actual mountain won't be the hardest part for me. I'm a little bit of a pretty boy. I'm kind of a Four Seasons Ritz-Carlton kind of guy. So for me, spending 10 days living out of a backpack and living in tents on the side of a mountain when it's going to be unbelievably hot, that is going to be a way bigger difficult challenge for me than the actual physical climbing. Like the being uncomfortable of not having the luxuries that I'm used to will be really hard for me, but I welcome that. And I can't wait to spend 10 days very much outside of my comfort zone doing those things.
Well, I tell you what, I feel a keynote coming from that experience.
Yeah.
I want to talk about experiences. I want to sidestep from some of the stuff we've done. Obviously, you got work ethic, great habits, you're committed. But in terms of experiences, I want to say three things to you. I want you to talk about that. First one is tattoos. The next one is hip hop, hooray, ho! And the other one is comedy. I read up on you a little bit about those things that I didn't know about yet.
Yeah, and it's funny because I don't mind showing. I've got full sleeves and some chest pieces and some back pieces, and have been collecting these tattoos for literally 30 years now. I got my first tattoo on each shoulder in my early 20s and have just slowly added to the artwork. And a lot of people are very surprised because when I'm doing my corporate keynotes, I wear a blazer and often a dress shirt, and I have a very professional appearance. And that's not to say that having tattoos isn't professional, but it's the look that I believe is most on brand for me when I'm on stage. And most people are shocked when they hear that I have this much ink. So yeah, tattoos have been something that I've enjoyed kind of adding to and show some individualism, and I'll keep getting some more. I usually get them every winter because you can't really get them during the summer when you're going to be out in the sun. But yeah, tattoos is something that a lot of people are very surprised that I have, because I guess they have me pictured as being a certain way, and that what they picture me as isn't always congruent with that. But what I do think is cool is, tattoos and piercings and different hairstyles, I do believe are more professionally accepted today than they have been in previous generations. And I think that's kind of cool. The other two things you mentioned, yeah, I'm a huge fan and have been for a long time of both hip hop and stand-up comedy. They happen to be two art forms that I actually enjoy. On some level, they're both forms of storytelling, and they're two art forms that I consume just simply as a fan. I mean, I love hip hop and I love to laugh, but I actually study both from a craft standpoint, and I just have so much admiration and can stand in awe of really good lyricists or really good stand-up comedians and the way that they can articulate their words and paint a picture and create imagery and tell a story. And while I'll never be a hip hop artist, and nor do I care to be a stand-up comedian, there are things from both of those genres that I try to use aspects of to become a better keynote speaker. And the lesson that I would hope would resonate with your audience is, whatever it is that you're trying to get good at or excel in, learn to think outside of that direct box. Learn to study other forms that might be able to help you in that. And, and I saw this modeled, guys like Kobe Bryant would study Beyonce and would study Tom Brady and would study Warren Buffett. And he was trying to learn from high performers that weren't in the game of basketball, because he thought he could pick up traits that he could emulate and then apply them to basketball. And
I saw a video recently where he was showed him following Michael Jackson and learning from him.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah,
he said he thought he worked hard, and then he met Michael Jackson.
Well, LeBron also studied with Warren. I think they're close friends.
Yeah,
he and Warren Buffett.
High performers want to study other high performers because, as we said at the very beginning of this call, these principles have such high utility. The traits that have made Warren Buffett one of the most successful investors of all time, are the same traits that have allowed Beyonce to be one of the best entertainers of all time, are the same things that have allowed Tom Brady to be one of the best quarterbacks of all time. So yeah, these traits, they extend past industry and vocation. So for me, I really enjoy studying high performers from a variety of different capacities. I mean, I'm right now at the time of this recording, I'm glued to watching the World Cup, and I'm not really a soccer guy. I mean, I played soccer as a kid, but I'm not a soccer purist, but I love watching it because I love watching anyone that is elite at what they do. Even if what they do is not something I'm good at or I'm interested in, I still want to try to learn from them.
Well, plus it's such human drama, and
Yes.
it's the highest form of competition. And right now it's the knockout round, so win or go home. And
Absolutely.
any win or go home sports situation, game sevens, whatever, that's exciting. I don't care what they're playing either. And for the record, I was fortunate to see Richard Pryor at Madison Square Garden, and I think that guy, I think he is highly regarded as an innovator, and a lot of comedians now credit him, but that guy was a special brand of comic. And it wasn't just, none of it was really stupid humor.
Right.
Everything was kind of with a point. And even your tattoos, you were doing it before everybody else was doing it. So I know you didn't do it just because you wanted to look cool. There was a reason. And I think I try to do everything I do with a reason. When I'm playing, even playing tennis, I try to have every shot have a purpose. I'm not looking to just get a ball back. I want to do something with it. And I think, that's probably in some way a principle of mine. And I guess that's purpose. Do everything with a purpose. Don't do anything because, you think somebody else did it and you want to be like them. So it seems to me you live kind of a unique life, but with universal principles.
That's very well said. Thank you.
Yeah, I
Hey,
like
Alan.
it myself.
Oh, sorry. Hey,
No.
Alan, we've talked a lot about things here, but I see that you have my book on your shelf over there, Next Play. You see, I wrote that right up there on the top. You can probably see that.
Yes.
I'm just kidding. I know that's your book. Thank you for sending that. Tell us some about your books. I know you're an author of a number of books.
Sure, yeah. So I've got 3 books, Raise Your Game, Sustain Your Game, and the most recent is Next Play, which is a next play mentality is a concept I learned when I read Coach K's first book, Leading with the Heart, back in the early 2000s. And it's something I've adopted in my own life and has been an absolute game changer. And really the epicenter of the next play mentality is to stop worrying about what just happened and focus on what's happening right now. Stop worrying about what you wished happened and focus on the reality of what actually happened. In other words, stop worrying about what was and learn how to focus on what is. And that frame and that mentality is something I apply in every area of my life, and as I said, has been an absolute game changer.
I want to ask you a question that I've asked a number of people. It's a question that I've not agonized over, but so as I said, I've worked with people in very, very difficult situations who tell me life is good. And I've met thousands of people who have every reason in the world to be grateful, appreciative, generous, and so many of them are miserable. And I've tried to figure out a way. My only way of kind of trying to remedy that is showing all these people, these other people, and saying if they can be so joyous in their life, living a life that you would look at and say, God, I'm glad that's not me. How do we make people appreciate what they have?
Well, if we're going to really break that down, I don't know that we can make anyone do anything, and I don't know that we can change anyone, but we can change ourselves and we can model that for others. I don't remember who said this originally. It might have been Maya Angelou, but it's we don't see the world as it is. We see it as we are. And that's just a reminder that, our own happiness and fulfillment has a lot less to do with external circumstances than it does with our view of those things or our perspective or how we choose to internalize them, which is why you can have someone who, again, on paper, has every valid, legitimate reason to blame, complain, and make excuses, and yet they don't. They choose to see the good and say life is good. And then on the exact same breath, you can see someone who has every opportunity, advantage, and luxury that they should revel in their lives, and they choose not to. And to me, though, that's a very empowering perspective and framework, because that means none of us need to be the victim to our circumstances or to the external. We all get to choose how we view the world around us. And, you know, if we can at least agree that we're all on this earth for a very finite time, seems to me it'd be in our best interest to spend most of that time looking through a lens of gratitude and compassion and appreciation and to see the good in it. And I try to do that, but trust me, like I said before, I have my moments. I have my moments where I'm frustrated or disappointed or angry or in a low mood. I have my moments where, woe is me, why did this happen to me? But thankfully, I'm at a point in my life where those don't last very long. I can quickly reframe. Remember that a lot of people have things a lot worse from an external circumstances situation, and it usually puts me back on a better course. But yeah, to me, the best thing each of us can do is just live and model the types of lives that add value to others and light other people's candles. And that's what I try to do on a daily basis.
Yeah, I love that statement about a candle loses nothing by igniting another candle. It's true. So, well, I mean, you have really presented a whole lot of wisdom, experience. I guess I'm old enough to say you're wise beyond your years. And I really, really appreciate it. And I already know that anybody who listens to or watches this is going to get a hell of a lot more than they might have anticipated, because everything you say is designed to help people feel better about themselves, live a better life, help other people. And, you know, I'm thrilled that we got to spend this time together. I really am.
Likewise, this was a lot of fun. It's been great chatting with you both. You guys do a great job, and yeah, this was a lot of fun for me. And certainly, if any of your listeners or viewers want to extend the conversation, if somebody has a question or wants to share something, I'm very accessible and responsive on social media. I'm just at Alan Stein Jr. on all of the major platforms. My website is is Alan Stein Jr. But yeah, if we can keep this discussion going, I think that'd be great. Greg, really appreciate the work you do in raising the level of youth sports. And yeah, this was a lot of fun for me. So thank you both so much.
I can't let you go yet, Alan, because I got to get a commitment from you.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So now you've been at Coach K Academy. You're still in good shape. If you can climb Kilimanjaro, have you been to Hoop Fest in Spokane?
Oh,
I have not. I've heard the lore and the legend of it, but I've never been.
It was just last weekend. I'm still trying to heal from it. The pain, I got purple bruises. My ego's hurt a little bit, but it's incredible.
Oh, come on. You lost in the championship. How bruised can your ego be?
Talk about losing on this show. I'll be talking about
well, you didn't win, okay? But
Alan,
it was the
you got to
championship.
come out and play. Over 50 next year at Hoop Fest. Last week in June every year.
I would love that. I'll have to add that to the calendar, man. That would be great. I would love to experience that.
All righty. Alan, it's been great, man. It's been real good. Thank you so much.
We did it.
Yeah, we did.
We pulled it off.
Thanks so much for hanging in there and coming back. And
of course. Thank you guys for your patience and
that's just another principle of yours.
Yeah.
It's commitments and
resilience.
Fulfilling them, resilience. So thank you so much for everything.
This was awesome.
Well, I hope you found Alan as compelling as we do. I mean, he's certainly a bright guy with information to share, and his experiences at the very top of the NBA. And I think he's used lessons. He's kind of soaked up lessons along the way, and is now has figured out a way to present all of that wisdom in an easy to digest form. Pretty dynamic guy. Greg?
I love that conversation with him. I love how prepared he is, how disciplined. He talked about habits. You can tell he's a student in everything he does, because he learns it and then he gets it and then he knows it. And the way he speaks so effectively, so just concise, and he's got such good lessons he's learned over his life. So that was really informative. I really learned a lot. I really like Alan. He's incredible.
Yeah, very unusual guy. And as you mentioned, I appreciate it too. One of the most well-spoken people I've ever conversed with. Anyway, everybody, thanks so much. Come back again next time to see who our next 3P champion is. Take care. Greg Stern, you rock.
Robbo, you know you're the man.
Come on.
Come
Till
on.
then, everybody, take care.